You're a child, 20,000 years ago. Look around at the other kids in your group. Your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, the ones you play with in the dirt every day. Now, here's the hard truth nobody would ever say out loud. By the time you're all grown, roughly half of them will be gone. Not moved away. Gone. In the ancient world, having a child was one thing. Keeping it alive was a brutal, uphill, years-long fight against a world that killed children constantly. And yet, somehow, it worked. Because you exist. Every single person watching this is the final link in an unbroken chain of children who survived, who beat odds that would terrify any modern parent. So how did they do it? No hospitals, no vaccines, no medicine as we'd know it. The answer isn't toughness, and it isn't luck. It's a handful of quiet, ingenious survival strategies. And by the end of this, you'll see one of them still running inside your own family today. But before we get to how they saved the child, you have to understand the problem. And the problem is the child itself. A human baby is the most helpless creature in the entire animal kingdom. And that helplessness is not an accident. It's the price we paid for everything that makes us human. A newborn horse stands and walks within hours. A baby chimpanzee grips its mother's fur and holds on from the first minute. A human newborn can't even lift its own head. Why are we born so absurdly unfinished? Because of the brain. Ours is so enormous that a baby can't finish building one before birth. A full-sized head would never fit through the birth canal. So evolution made a trade. A human baby is born with a brain only about a quarter of its adult size, while a chimp's is closer to half. Which means most of your brain grew after you were born, while you were completely defenseless. That was the deal. The smartest animal on Earth, delivered as the most fragile. And picture what that meant 20,000 years ago. A baby that couldn't cling, couldn't crawl from danger, couldn't even stay quiet when a predator was near. Add in infections with no antibiotics, cold with no walls, and hunger with no backup, and a child's life hung by a thread every single day. So how did any of them survive? The answer is the one thing the modern world has almost entirely lost. They never did it alone. We picture a lone mother and father in their own little cave. That's almost completely wrong. In a hunter-gatherer band, a baby belonged to everyone. Watch a group like the Ifi of the Congo, and you'll see a single infant passed between more than a dozen different people in one afternoon, its mother holding it less than half the time. The rest of the day it lived in other arms. Grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, cousins, even women it wasn't related to, some of whom would nurse it themselves. The anthropologist Sarah Hrdy calls us cooperative breeders, and it makes humans genuinely strange. A mother chimp raises her baby almost entirely alone and attacks anyone who reaches for it. We're the opposite. We evolved to raise children as a group, not because it was sweet, but because a creature as helpless as a human baby simply could not be kept alive any other way. We didn't survive because we were strong. We survived because we shared the weight. And if that's already changing how you picture the ancient world, subscribe. This whole channel is about the quiet, forgotten things that actually made us human. Now, keeping that baby alive meant winning 3 specific fights. The first was simply keeping it safe through the night. The rule was almost absolute. The baby was never put on the ground. Never alone, never far from a body. Part of that was pure necessity. When our ancestors stood up and walked on 2 legs, we slowly lost the thick fur that a baby ape clings to. A chimp baby grabs a fistful and hangs on. A human baby has nothing to hold. So we carried them. And invented the first piece of baby technology, slings woven from hide and plant fiber, worn every hour of every day. And at night, there was fire. A fire didn't just keep a baby warm against the cold that kills small bodies fastest. It held back the dark and the leopards and hyenas that hunted in it. To sleep in the circle of a fire, wrapped against your mother, surrounded by your whole group, was the safest a helpless child could possibly be. There's even a reflex hiding in all this. Pick up a crying newborn and hold it close and it goes quiet. Heart rate dropping, breathing settling. That instinct kept ancient babies silent while they were carried, and a silent baby is one a predator never finds. Your own child still does it today. The second fight was feeding, and the most dangerous moment in a whole childhood was hiding right in the middle of it. There was no formula, no bottles, no water clean enough for an infant to drink. So mothers breastfed, and for a long time, commonly 2, 3, even 4 years. That milk wasn't just food, it was medicine, carrying a living stream of antibodies from mother to child, the only immune defense a baby had. It even doubled as birth control. Constant nursing holds off the next pregnancy, so a mother was never overwhelmed by 2 helpless infants at once. But then came weaning, the switch from that protective milk to ordinary food. And this was the killing window. The antibodies stopped, and suddenly the child was eating the same possibly spoiled food and drinking the same unclean water as everyone else, with an immune system barely built. Many children who survived birth and infancy were lost right here, which is exactly why ancient knowledge mattered so much. The elders who knew which plants soothed a fever or cleaned a wound, which foods were safe, which were poison. That hard-won wisdom, passed down by word of mouth for thousands of years, was the closest thing they had to a pharmacy. And it saved lives. The third fight had an unlikely hero. The grandmother. Here's a genuinely odd fact about our species. Most animals reproduce right up until they die, but human women stop, menopause, and then often live for decades more. From a cold survival standpoint, that seems pointless. Why keep a body running long after it can have babies? In the 1990s, the anthropologist Kristen Hawkes went looking for the answer among the Hadza of Tanzania and found something surprising. The hardest-working foragers in the whole group weren't the young mothers. They were the old women, out in the heat for hours, digging up tough tubers that little children could never get for themselves, and feeding those calories straight to their grandkids. A grandmother who can't have more babies of her own can pour everything into keeping her daughter's babies alive. And children with an active grandmother nearby simply survived more often. It's called the grandmother hypothesis, and it turns menopause from a glitch into a masterstroke. You may be alive today because, long ago, a determined old woman with a digging stick refused to let a child go hungry. So step back and look at the real answer. How did ancient humans keep their children alive? Not with medicine, and not with one heroic parent. They did it by turning raising a child into a team sport, carried in shifts, guarded by fire, nursed for years, watched over by grandmothers, passed between a dozen hands a day. The sheer helplessness of the human baby, the thing that should have wiped us out, is exactly what forced our ancestors to become the most cooperative apes that ever lived. And we know it wasn't cold arithmetic, because they left us proof. Archaeologists have found Ice Age children buried with breathtaking care. One infant laid to rest with hundreds of shell beads someone must have spent countless hours making. You don't do that for a creature you merely tolerated. You do it for someone you loved. Which lands us somewhere uncomfortable. We've largely won this fight, and thank God we have. Clean water, vaccines, and medicine have crushed child mortality. A modern parent will almost never bury a child, and that is one of the greatest victories in all of human history. But look at how we did it, and something is missing. We solved the dying. We did not keep the village. For hundreds of thousands of years, a mother had a whole web of people helping raise every child, every single day. Today, in much of the modern world, that web is gone, and a new parent sits alone at 3 in the morning with a screaming infant, and nobody is coming. No grandmother down the path, no aunt in the next shelter. That crushing exhaustion isn't weakness or failure. It's the ache of trying to do, completely alone, the one thing your body was never, in all of human history, built to do alone. So, how did ancient humans actually keep their children alive? Together. That's the whole secret. A child, 20,000 years ago, wasn't guarded by one anxious parent against a merciless world. It was watched by a sharp-eyed grandmother, carried by an older sister, warmed by a fire, fed by an aunt, and passed from hand to hand to hand through every dangerous day and every cold night. You survived, in the end, not because one person loved you enough, but because a whole group of people decided, over and over, day after day, that you were worth keeping alive. That is the oldest safety net there is. And every one of us is living proof that, against impossible odds, it held.